There we go. So good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining on this second day of Child Abuse Prevention Month. As you all know, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we are very excited to spend just a little bit of time with you this morning. Some similar information if you joined yesterday, and new information if this is your first time today. Strengthening Families Approach and Protective Factors Framework was introduced in 2003 by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. So this information is research-informed, strength-based approach that prevents child abuse and neglect by focusing on the well-being of all families and helping families identify and build on their own protective factors. Doris Duke Charitable Foundation funded the original research and then also funded Children's Trust Fund alliances to engage in its network of children's trust and prevention funds to demonstrate unique and innovative ways to implement the protective factors framework. Each of the protective factors is essential. So we covered one yesterday, we'll cover one today, and then one every day this week. But the most important is what they do together to build strength and stability in families. So good morning. My name is Sarah Sarelson, and I am the Executive Director of the Wyoming Children's Trust Fund. I have been in this role since 2020, and it is so great to be doing all of this work with all of you across the state. So I have a question for everybody this morning, and it's a fun one. Do we prefer beaches or mountains? I'm going to ask you in just a moment, and you can get ready now to put your answer in, to put your name, where it is that you work, where in Wyoming are you, and do you prefer beaches or mountains? But I will tell you that I am not much of a rule breaker, so I'm going to say, or a rule follower, I'm the rule breaker. So I'm going to say I prefer both beaches and mountains. I like to go on vacation and spend time away. And most important to me is who I am either at a beach or in the mountains with. So I'm going to tell you that I like both beaches and mountains. I'm going to let my co-presenter introduce herself this morning.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Faith Joy. I am an intern with the Wyoming Children's Trust Fund. I'm a senior at the University of Wyoming and I'm studying social work, and I'll be helping out with today's presentation. So feel free to put anything in the chat if you have any questions throughout, and I'll be happy to assist.
Okay, Faith, do you prefer beaches or mountains?
Well, I am from South Carolina, so I think I gotta go with the beach.
Very nice. All right. So for the rest of you, we want to hear from you. Do you prefer beaches or mountains? If you'll use the chat box, or there are some fun emojis, you can also find your beach or mountains, or beach and mountains. And let's test out our chat and our emojis this morning. There we go. Mountains and beaches. Absolutely. Beaches and mountains. I think there is not a wrong answer. Beaches and or mountains. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for playing along a little bit. This protective factors framework and training is designed to be used with anyone who works with children and families in any field. So no matter where you work or what you do, your work with children and families falls within the spectrum of these various systems. And it's important to view the building of protective factors in this holistic manner. When we understand these concrete ways that we can support the building of protective factors in our own field, it may then illuminate those challenges experienced in other fields as well. And so that's why it's so helpful for all of us to meet together and talk about protective factors. Lens that we encourage you to look at families through is this strength-based lens. We want you to focus on what is strong in families and not what's wrong with families. So this strength-based theory does not mean that we ignore weaknesses and problems. Finding solutions to problems and addressing the risk factors in families is important. It prevents failure and helps families survive. But if we're always singularly focused on fixing, families will always be in survival mode. If we want families to thrive and our own families to thrive, we have to concentrate on what our families, what other families are doing well, and build on that. We have to look at families through this different lens and focus on what is strong so that they can thrive. We do a lot of different training materials. I'm wondering if you all have previously had training in ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. If you would raise your Zoom hand if you have previously had training in ACEs. And I see actually we have some ACEs trainers here joining us today. So thanks so much for hopping on. Look at all of those hands, thumbs up. Yes, yes, very good. When we did these trainings years ago, there were many less people who knew about adverse childhood experiences and had training in ACEs. So it's great to see how many people across the state really are getting into these trainings and knowing more, and who are training this material. So if you are a trainer, thank you so much for doing that as well. I have a quick video that I want to share as we get started, and I'm going to get a little drink of my tea. So I'll be right back.
Toxic stress. Parts of the brain that might be weakened are those regulating complex functions like emotional self-regulation, social interactions, and abstract thinking. This may have consequences throughout life and can result in social, behavioral, and cognitive challenges.
Toxic stress implies a certain level of adversity, and that often occurs early in life within childhood. So children who have experienced adverse childhood experiences have been found through very diligent research to be at increased risk for a number of long-term problems when they reach adolescence and adulthood. And these problems really span multiple domains. They can be behavioral problems, emotional problems, and physical problems. So if you think about it, children who have had early adversity are at higher risk, much higher risk for major depression and suicidality, for anger management problems, for delinquency and high-risk behavior, for dropping out of school, for teen pregnancy, for runaway behavior, for adult criminality, and for liver disease and lung disease and heart disease, among other things. So it has a profound long-term impact, potentially.
So we have a room full of experts here that know about ACEs and about protective factors. So I'm wondering if anybody's willing to come off of mute this morning and just share, why do you think it is that we connect ACEs and protective factors? What do you know? What are those pieces that research tells us about when children have experienced adverse events in their life? What is the role of protective factors? Anybody feeling brave this morning and ready to come off of mute?
To lessen the impact of that toxic stress and give support.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, so research tells us, so the science behind what happens in our brain is that when we have good experiences, that also matters in development. And so building the protective factors and positive experiences makes such a difference when we're talking about children and adults who have experienced adverse experiences. So protective factors can build resilience and potentially moderate those long-term impacts of adverse childhood experience. And research has found that certain protective factors moderate the long-term effects. The effects of ACEs may be partially or even fully moderated by the presence of an adult who makes a child feel safe, by having adequate social supports in the form of a loving, stable adult, or by living in a safe and supported neighborhood. Because protective factors have been shown to moderate the stress of ACEs and have been linked to positive lifelong results, the presence of protective factors may be particularly important among those with co-occurring ACEs. So when we're thinking about the families that we're working with or our own families, we want to be sure that we are also taking into consideration what are we doing to be sure that we're increasing protective factors. I'm going to put a study here in the chat box for you. I tested the links out this morning. I hear some of them did not work yesterday, so we're working on that. But these should work today. This study focuses on the protective factors of the presence of positive adult relationships in a child's life. So, drawing on substantial research that has been conducted in the role of those safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. While safe, stable, and nurturing relationships have been studied mostly within the context of child maltreatment or experiences that generally encompass different types of abuse and neglect, this study also argues that the premise of safe, stable, and nurturing relationships parallels the importance of positive relationships as protective factors. So it's important for children who haven't had adverse childhood experiences also to have protective factors. And that's what the science tells us. So understanding that exposure to childhood adversity has these long-term effects that may be moderated by protective factors is a crucial step in preventing and responding to ACEs exposure. So the consequences and long-term impact of ACEs exposure that we know can be intergenerational, with the parents' exposure to ACEs adversely affecting their children. This study then reinforces that ACEs and related social or environmental factors should continue to be considered a risk factor for that disease and illness, and that protective factors may be able to serve as a prevention strategy. So in Child Abuse Prevention Month, that's why we talk about protective factors, because it is a child abuse prevention strategy to reduce the burden of some of the leading causes of maltreatment and even our outcomes in death and public health. So we also know that there are benefits of friendships. So good friends are good for our health. So we know that making sure that children have these positive experiences is really important. It's also really important for adults to have these positive experiences. So friends can help you celebrate good times, provide support during bad times. They prevent isolation and loneliness and give you a chance to offer needed companionship. Friends also increase our sense of belonging and purpose. They boost our happiness and reduce our stress. They improve your self-confidence and self-worth. They help us all to cope with traumas such as divorce, serious illness, job loss, or the death of a loved one. And they encourage us to change or to avoid unhealthy lifestyle habits, such as excessive drinking or lack of exercise. Friends play a significant role in promoting children's overall health, but also for adults, and is an important piece to child abuse prevention. There's a link there with the study from Mayo Clinic if you are wanting to look at the research more. So Marty, we're going to talk about now. Marty is a single parent to a 3-year-old Kyle and 10-month-old Ben. The children go to a child care center while Marty works full-time. Marty's family lives far away, except for a sister who lives in the next town over. Marty attends a local church, but has little time to socialize with others. She uses all of her spare time to take care of her household chores and trying to maintain a happy home. Another single parent at the child care center invited Marty and the children over for dinner one evening. Watching the children play and chatting with another adult after dinner was nice. They decided to take turns hosting each other for dinner every few weeks. Marty's not like many parents who have very, very busy lives. All of us who are here today multitasking probably while we're listening in. She's doing her best to raise her kids, and doesn't always prioritize her social life until someone reached out to her. She was lacking those social connections that could enrich her life and ultimately her children's lives, as well as provide support when she needs it. This protective factor focuses on social connections. It's one of the 5 in the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework. These social connections help families stay strong and get through the hard times and enjoy family life. We often get so wrapped up in all of the things that we have to do that we sometimes forget that on that list also is, who are we connecting with? And the families that you're working with, who are they connecting with? Ensuring that that is a piece that is important to preventing child abuse. Families can have many different types, and they do, of social connections to provide different types of support. No matter the type of connection, it should be positive. Someone that's there for you, treats you well, helps you to be the best person that you can be. Those positive social connections can help provide support when you need it, help us deal with stress and illness, and are a positive influence that brings out the best in us. So social connections might mean friends and family who provide free childcare when parents need a break. Parents with children around the same age who get together to enjoy activities together. A friend to take the night off with and to laugh and relax. Parenting friends who you can share the ups and downs of parenting. Someone who can pick up your child from school or an activity when you have an emergency. Neighbors who pass along hand-me-downs, clothes, and baby gear. Someone to just take a walk with. Virtual friends through Facebook, Instagram, blogs, or other social media where you can share stories, parenting tips, and photos. Parents with a social network of emotionally supportive friends, family, and neighbors often find it easier to care for their children and themselves. Most parents need people they can call on, even once in a while, when they need a sympathetic listener, advice, or some concrete support. The research tells us that parents who are isolated with few social connections are at a higher risk for abuse and neglect. That's why this is important. Social connections are the antidote to social isolation. When parents feel isolated, they can feel closed in and without support. When parents feel disconnected from others or close friends, their level of parental support can become overwhelming with the stress, undermining their ability to parent effectively and may potentially lead to abuse and neglect. So social connections lessen that isolation factor and then lessen the likelihood of child maltreatment. I have another study I want to share with you. There's the link. So this landmark study showed that lack of social connection is a greater detriment to health than obesity, smoking, and high blood pressure. Say that again. The study shows that a lack of social connection is a greater detriment to our health than obesity, smoking, and high blood pressure. So, on the other hand, strong social connection led to a 50% increase in longevity. It strengthens our immune system. It helps you recover from disease faster. And it may even lengthen our life. People who feel more connected to others have lower levels of anxiety and depression. And studies tell us that they also have higher self-esteem, greater empathy for others, are more trusting and cooperative, and as a consequence, others are more open and trusting and cooperating with them. Social connectedness generates this positive feedback loop of social, emotional, and physical well being. I want to give you the opportunity now to come off mute if you feel so inclined, or to put in the chat box your thoughts on social connectedness. Is this something that you have always considered this way? Is this new information? Is this a reminder? What are your thoughts on the studies that talk about social connectedness and the important role that it has in preventing child abuse? A new priority to focus on. Thanks, Allison. Self-ruins destroy real connectedness. A reminder that socialization is key to healthy human. I knew it was important. I didn't know it posed such a health risk, more than smoking. Yes, that it's so very important. And when we think about social media and using cell phones, I will say that we don't want cell phones to replace what we can get from human to human interaction, but it could be a bonus, that there could be additional contacts that we have and additional relationships, and that there are lots of different ways that we all connect with people, and that we want to make sure that those connections are being done in as many ways as possible. And so if we're having in-person contact, we're calling people, we're interacting with people in groups, coming on a webinar and being part of a group and being part of a discussion is all part of what's making us strong to be able to do this work, because we're doing it together. I'm going to pass it over to Faith, who is going to do a very great activity.
Thank you, Sarah. Alrighty, if everybody would go ahead and grab a piece of paper, or you can go ahead and use the Notes app in your phone. I'll give you just a second to get those materials. Okay, so hopefully everybody has something. So just take a moment to think about, who would you call in an emergency? Maybe you have a flat tire, maybe you were in a car wreck and you need a ride, or maybe you were just stuck in the shower. Go ahead and write that name down. Now, in this scenario, that person does not answer the phone. Who will you call if that person is not available or does not answer the phone? Cross out the first name you wrote and write down who you will call when the first person does not answer. Now, in this scenario, your second person also does not answer the phone. Cross that name out and think about who the third person is that you will call. Write their name down. Alrighty. So you call them a couple of times and this third person still does not answer. Cross their name out. Now, if the first three people you called did not answer, who will you call? Write down their name. Now, while you're thinking about that, I have some questions I would love for you to answer. If you would feel free to throw them in the chat box. So after doing this activity, what are some of the things that you've thought about? How are these people connected to you? How important is it to have a stable support system near you? And what happens when families do not have a support system in place? So take a few moments, think about those questions, and throw some answers in the chat box. So Carol said families that do not have a support system feel helpless and hopeless. This is very true. Having a network of people to support you can be really empowering. Jewel said most are family and close friends. It makes you think about how reliable people are. Thank you so much for your participation. I appreciate it. So we do this exercise to help each of us identify our own social connections or safety network, as this is important for all of us. This activity demonstrates the importance of having a support system in place. When there are more people around a family, the harder it is to fall. One of the most common obstacles to fostering a culture of positive social connections that is sustainable long-term is shame. Frank Lebach, a missionary who some call a modern-day mystic, says, "We really never do anybody much good unless we share the deepest experiences of our souls." At the heart of sharing our struggles, pain, and triumphs with one another is vulnerability. Being vulnerable with one another is the key that can unlock shame in them as well as ourselves. This is where the public narrative can really have a major impact, not just in connecting and recruiting volunteers, but is just as important in sustaining long-term connection with parents we work with. When parents know we have had struggles, pain, and triumphs too, we are no longer in a different reality than they are, but in solidarity with them in the present reality.
Hi, I'm Jade. I'm Nikki. Hi.
I have never ever been in a ball pit before.
What?
You've never been in the ball pit?
Nah, never.
You gotta go.
No, I've seen them, but I've never been in one.
You know, I remember these ball pits. My kids grew up in them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see.
Okay, this is a good one. Share 3 things on your bucket list. First one is to go skydiving.
I want to go skydiving.
Have you ever had those dreams where you're just like floating and you're flying and everything? Scuba diving is just exactly that.
Don't you get afraid of drowning or being underwater, getting attacked by an octopus, or any of those things?
I want to learn curling,
What is it?
like that Winter Olympic sport.
Oh, all right, where you slide the
Yeah, and then it's like bowling and sweeping.
Find one thing you have in common. Do you play sports?
Not currently.
I play soccer, so
Soccer.
yeah. All right.
Actually, I play the drums. Do you play any instruments?
I quit everything I ever tried.
All right.
Actually, fun fact, these aren't real teeth. Yeah.
I have a flicker tip.
Really?
Oh my god! No! I can't wait. Mm-hmm.
What?
My front too.
Oh my gosh.
What? You don't even understand. I swear to God, I feel like someone planted us here for this reason.
Destiny.
Describe the first time you fell in love.
Oh, I think it was kindergarten. I don't remember his name, but he was beautiful.
I was in the Navy,
You were in the Navy?
and my husband was in the Navy. Long story short, before he ever kissed me or we were ever really together, he told me he loved me. 24 years later, we're more in love and we're better friends than even from the very beginning.
That's true love in its finest. Talk about someone who inspires you.
It's all right to talk about somebody that's a religious character.
Yeah, why not?
Uh-huh.
This is our ball pit. We can talk about whoever we want, right?
Jesus.
All right.
Just my peers. They're all creative in their own ways and have their own realities and own lessons. I just grow from everybody else's as well as my own. Martin Luther King, I think, because the fact that we're sitting in this box together is a big deal, you know. But
You know who inspires me, believe it or not, is my daughter. She is everything I ever wanted to be.
All right. Talk about the experience that changed your life. Oh, that's a good one. After my wife decided that it was time that we split, I started to have a different perspective on life. I saw women differently. I saw relationships differently. I think I became more appreciative of women.
How old did you say you are? 20?
Yeah.
Okay. At the age of 21, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and it pulled the rug out from all my plans. It really changes the way you look at things.
My grandmother has it.
Who does?
My grandmother.
There's our comment.
We found the comment.
We found the comment.
That's why it was still here. We found the comment.
Oh, create a secret handshake. Okay.
Okay, but nothing was spit. Okay, so that.
By both hands.
Okay.
So this.
And then whoever gets on the top makes a flag.
Oh, now I forgot what it is.
And then like maybe a little twitch in the middle.
1, 2,
1, 2.
I did.
All right, we did it.
That was
Awesome. I actually had a lot of fun. I was a little bit nervous because normally you don't hang out with strangers in ball pits. I got to learn some pretty cool things about you.
It was really nice to meet you.
You too.
I hope I see
I'll
you
take a
again.
look.
Okay, I love it.
I'm really impressed by you. I was worried that I would start talking to you like a mom. I don't know if I did.
No. Nah, you
No.
didn't. Trust me. You did good.
Soul Pancake, subscribe.
So, social connections are the antidote to social isolation. Social isolation is usually defined as a lack of social networks or a limited amount of communication with others. In some cases, it also means an absence of close ties with others over a long period of time. When parents feel isolated, whether this is due to living in a dangerous neighborhood, being far away from family, moving to a new place, or having lives that feel too busy for socializing, they can feel closed in and without support. When parents feel disconnected from other family or close friends, their level of parental stress can become overwhelming, undermining their ability to parent effectively and may potentially lead to abuse and neglect. Social connections lessen that isolation factor and subsequently lessen the likelihood of child maltreatment. Social connections, the antidote to isolation, are built on our ability and our opportunity to communicate. Let's look at these areas and see where we might be able to improve on them. First, starting with the ability to communicate. Think for a moment about a professional whose salary depends on their ability to communicate. For example, a newspaper journalist. The journalist works under constant pressure to meet deadlines. Newspaper readers will often determine which stories they read or pay attention to based on the headline of a story. A journalist might feel that writing a good headline is a burden, that the story they worked so hard on is the important thing. If you think like a reader, however, you will realize that most people scan headlines and photographs, making decisions about what they want to commit more time to as they read the stories that are most interest to them. Our ability to communicate in everyday life has some parallels to the task of a journalist. We communicate with others in the midst of our busy and harried lives. We can be guilty of communicating with others in headlines that can be easily misunderstood. When this happens, we may lose any further opportunity to communicate with families we serve. Consider these guidelines given to beginning journalists as they learn to write headlines. Could it be that these might be useful to increase our own ability to communicate? How we speak and what we say matters. Sometimes things we say, though unintended, can be misunderstood. Culture plays a huge role in communication. Examining how each communication is a step in creating strong social connections.
Hi. I'm a mom of 3 kiddos, 5, 3, and 1. And I also watch 2 other kiddos at my house that are 4 and another one that's the same age as my 1-year-old. They're almost 20 months now. And I adore nap time. And at nap time, my daughter had grown out of naps and she decided that her and I should be playing games together and doing different things. And through that process, I realized I needed that time for myself and looked into different preschool programs that would give her the social connections that I wanted for her. So I signed her up for a preschool class from 12:45 until 3:30, which I thought was perfect. That would allow me time by myself and also allow my kids to sleep. What I found was the transportation Monday through Thursday was very difficult for me and for my kids. And every single day I watched this black truck go by my road right at the exact same time that I was loading up 5 children before nap to take them to preschool. And I realized that this was my neighbor who lived down the street from me, who had 3 children herself, who has walked by my house many, many times. And I hadn't wanted to make the connection with her because I wasn't sure if I did make that connection, would her kids come over? Would they be nice? Would they come over uninvited? Would they come over every day? Would this become a problem in my home? And so I just sort of waved every single time she went by. But over and over every day, as I was loading 5 kids up in the car to take her to preschool at 12:45, and often having to wake up an infant or toddler to go and pick her up at 3:30, I felt I was out of my integrity and somewhat losing my mind with the responsibility of loading 5 children twice a day. So finally, she drove by, and I was outside with the children, and I waved at her, and she stopped and she pulled in the driveway. And through that conversation, I said, "Oh, I see you drive by every single day." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm dropping off my kids at New Horizons Preschool." And I thought, oh, instantly I just wanted to like hold her and cry. And we ended up working out a deal that I watch her kiddo, because she doesn't get a break either, 1 day a week. And she drives my daughter back and forth to preschool. The children get to nap. I get the 2-hour rest and break that I'm looking for. And the relationship has continued to the point where her and I are both going to be sharing some of the transportation for kindergarten next year. I decided to put my son in the same preschool class as her son. And not only that, but we've decided that her and I would go out and let our husbands watch and build this relationship even deeper. So I just really appreciated trusting and dropping some of that fear. And it just turned out to be a win-win situation.
So sometimes we do things that are outside of our comfort zone, and despite that uneasiness, they end up being very beneficial. In this case, Brooke found a new close friend as well as a potential carpooling mom. So here are some questions that I would just like to pose to you guys. Feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourselves to answer them. So what strengths do you see this mother display despite her challenges? Perseverance, resourcefulness, openness. Yeah, these are great, guys. One thing she says is very honest and perhaps not what we would have expected to hear from a parent. She describes her concerns about making this friendship. What makes her bypass those fears and take a new chance on this friend? the connection and the things they have in common. Yeah, that's a really great point, especially because they both have young children. So let's move on to the last question. Oh, tried it and it worked initially. Yes, that's a great point. All right, so our last question for this activity is, we can never be sure where a new friendship will take us. Where has Brooke's friendship taken her, and how has it lessened the stress she was feeling before she talked with her neighbor? It has helped her to see that the neighbor needs her too. That's a great point, Carol. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, especially with this arrangement that they have going on so that the neighbor also has time for herself. Connection increased opportunities to share time and resources. Absolutely. I think that's really a wonderful takeaway from this. Thank you for everybody who shared and participated. If you Google parental involvement, the articles referring to schools and how parents can get involved are endless. But what doesn't pop up in the search and isn't as readily discussed or promoted is the concept of parents interacting with other parents, spending time together, creating friendships, and supporting each other through the challenges of parenting. Perhaps it is because parents who work all day are less willing to spend time outside the home once they have returned in the evening or weekend routines have begun. Social connections between parents are a proven way to decrease isolation that can be a primary factor in the maltreatment of children. So, if we can build this characteristic in families, it seems logical that it will benefit parents as well as their children. We know that being connected to family, friends, and community has shown to reduce the risk of harm to children. Parents who feel they have emotional support in times of need are better equipped to handle times of high stress or crisis. Parents who have someone to talk to about a bad day, to strategize with a difficult parenting issue, or to even have a fun evening to take a break will feel more successful as a caregiver over time. These connections can be crucial components in many areas and should be fostered and encouraged. Options for social support can include formal support, such as informal support, such as friends, family, and neighbors that help provide for emotional needs or connections. Some program strategies that work here are establishing a welcome space for parents to socialize, offering opportunities for parents to get together and normalizing situations such as picnics or potlucks, as well as connecting parents with other organizations that offer opportunities for parents to connect. Parents themselves can plan or attend social events that help parents and children connect, work to make trusted connections in your community, as well as surrounding yourselves with people who are positive supports. In looking at the Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework logic model on this slide, think about how this protective factor, social connections, fits into this framework. As you begin brainstorming ways to better forge connections with the parents that you serve, consider this criteria for strengthening families set forth by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. The approach should benefit all families, build upon family strengths, buffer risk, and promote better outcomes, be implemented through small but significant changes in everyday actions, build upon or become part of an existing program, strategy, system, and community opportunities, and be grounded in knowledge of research, practice, and implementation. There are specific strategies and everyday actions we can take to help build the social connections protective factor. One strategy that is closely related to building social connections in families is facilitate friendships and mutual support, helping parents connect with each other and developing those social networks. In addition, the Center for the Study of Social Policy has identified the following everyday actions that help support the social connections protective factor. These include helping families value, build, sustain, and use social connections, creating an inclusive environment, facilitating mutual support around parenting and other issues, as well as promoting engagement in the community and participation in community activities. Webster's Dictionary defines a strategy as a careful plan or method for achieving a particular goal, usually over a long period of time. The strategy associated with social connections lays out a pathway that will lead families to build stronger social connections. The everyday action gives more details about what this looks like in everyday life. As you consider each of the everyday actions for social connections, please provide concrete examples of ways that you may already be putting these everyday actions into place. So to repeat these everyday actions, again, keep these in mind and think of examples about how you would implement these. So these everyday actions include, once again, helping families value, build, sustain, and use social connections, creating an inclusive environment, facilitating mutual support around parenting and other issues, and promoting engagement in the community and participation in community activities. A key element in many states and communities' implementation of strengthening families has been the use of cafe-style conversations among parents and caregivers. Cafes are a method of facilitating meaningful, reflective conversations that promote leadership and collaboration. These gatherings, derived from the World Cafe model, bring community members together for a series of structured discussions that directly or indirectly address protective factors. Through participation in cafes, parent and caregivers build leadership and relationships and the protective factors to help strengthen their families. A method for engaging people in conversation that matters includes a set of design principles and an essential strategy for engaging people in small group conversations. Cafes designed for parents to build protective factors are just one of the many ways the World Cafe method has been adapted and used around the world.
Think of the last time you spent with your family or friends or people you care about. How did this make you feel? Being connected with people in your life helps you feel like you belong. It even helps reduce stress, boost your immune system, lowers blood pressure, and can lengthen your life. In fact, people with strong social support are usually happier, have better mental health, and feel a stronger sense of belonging in their community. Unfortunately, people who feel alone or isolated often have poor health. In fact, new research shows that not having social relationships can shorten our lives as much as smoking over 100 cigarettes per week. But the good news is that we can all do things to change this and to help ourselves and others feel more connected. Let's look at an example. This is Sammy. He just moved to a new city and does not have any family there. Because his new job takes up a lot of his time, he hasn't made any close friends yet. He comes home from work most days and spends time by himself watching TV or on his computer. He misses having his family around and is starting to feel a little more sad and tired each day. So what can Sammy do to get better connected with others? Sammy can start by getting out and exploring his new neighborhood. Maybe he can check out his community center to see what activities they have there. He can have lunch or go for a walk with his new coworkers. Sammy loves cycling but doesn't know the area. He could visit a bike shop to see if there are neighborhood bike groups or look online for a bike group to join. Volunteering is another great way to get connected in your community. He could check out Volunteer Canada, the local newspaper, or local agencies to see where volunteer help is needed. Like most of us, there may be a time when Sammy needs a little more help. When moving to a new city, recovering from an illness, or going through a life change, calling someone you trust or talking to a mental health professional can really help. If available, Sammy could get support from his Employee Assistance Program or call 211 to find out about programs and resources for support. The reality is that we all need people in our life during good times and during tough times. Make sure to reach out when you need help. Be open to accept help when it's offered and help others in return. So now, try to think about something you can do to make your connection stronger. Are there people in your life or groups that you could reach out to? How about others in your community who would benefit from more connections? Could you offer to make a meal for a new parent or caregiver, or maybe a neighbor who's having a tough time? Write all of your ideas down and pick one thing you can do this week to get more connected or help others get more connected. Even small things, like holding the door for someone, taking out the garbage for your neighbor, bringing food to someone in need. These can all lead to big changes that can improve your connections, your physical health.
Many elements of your program environment, such as physical space, opening hours, and staffing, will have an impact on how well your program is able to facilitate friendships and mutual support among parents. Some of the questions you might ask yourself as you seek to increase social connections among your families might be: do your staff members reflect the cultures of the families you serve? Regardless of their background, do your staff members have training in cultural competence? Is your program space welcoming to adults? Is there time and space for parents to talk to each other and make those connections? And if your program works with families one-on-one, are staff members asking parents about their social connections and encouraging them to develop positive ones? So we have just a one question survey for you guys to complete to give us feedback on this webinar. Sarah will be putting it in the chat for us. So please feel free. We would love some feedback and just knowing how we can make this series better for you guys. And thank you all for joining us today. If you have any questions or want any more further information, please feel free to contact us with the information on this slide.